We're gonna get started. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and open the Hood River City Council meeting for May 9th. It is about 8 minutes after 6. And I'll just ask people to turn off or turn down your cell phone, please. And we'll do the land acknowledgement and the Pledge of Allegiance. As we meet tonight, let us all remember that today we are stewards of land that has been home to Indigenous peoples for thousands of years before the recent arrival of the European heritage dominant culture. We honor this land's ancestors as we go about our business today. All right, we'll do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right, so we're going to recess our Hood River City Council meeting, and right now at 6:10, and we're going to go into opening the Hood River Urban Renewal Agency meeting at 6:10. Do we have any additions or corrections?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay. Is there anyone that wants to speak for business from the audience for Urban Renewal? Did we have any signups, Jen? No, okay, all right. So there's a consent agenda, which is approval of meeting minutes from April 11th.
I will move we approve the meeting minutes from April 11th, 2022.
I'll second that.
Megan's made a motion to approve the consent agenda, which is the meeting minutes. And we have a second from Mark. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Chapman, aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Chair votes aye. All right, we have two presentations this evening. First of all, we have Art of Community with Kristen Godkin. Come on up.
I want to do a little PowerPoint slide. So we do that. Is it ready?
Yeah, there we go. This one right here.
Yeah. We'll just run as a slideshow. Do you want to do that?
Yes. I think so. Do you do? Well, that's the click. Well, that's right. You're gonna have to click through the video. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's
Share it on Zoom. There you go.
So I think most everyone is familiar with Art of Community, but if anyone's not, I'll just give a brief history. We started in 2014, and it was a way to promote artists and the artwork throughout the gorge. We have a, as you guys know, we have a phenomenal recreation and brewery and community, and we just really wanted to highlight artists in the artwork that we have here and the talent. So I got together with a couple artists. We started Art Community, and that first year we thought we'd just ask a few sponsors if they'd support it and get a couple sculptures up. And it was a phenomenal response from the city, everyone we talked to, the city, the port, and then developers and other agencies and Providence. So we ended up putting, I believe it was maybe 9 sculptures that first year. And then we rotated it for 1 year. And then we decided to go to a 2-year cycle. So over 2 years, we've probably installed over 60 pieces of artwork throughout the city. And it's a 2-year rotation. And we put a national call out to artists and we request their submittals. And then we go through a jury process and we select a short list, and then we go out and we talk to sponsors and we ask them what they'd like for their site that they sponsor. Trying to think what else. We're currently in a new phase or a new session. So this last session that's been here is going to be phased out in the next month, and they'll be deinstalled. So you'll be seeing them taken away. And then a new round will be installed for probably the end of June. They'll all be complete. And then as you see, we have these handy maps that we give out to everyone. We also have I'm not sure why it's not showing up there. Oh, there we go. Great. Okay, so. Okay. And also part of the big art in our community, we help the city with the permanent installation that's at the bike hub. You can see it right there. The city put, I believe it was like $22,000 to $25,000 towards a commission. And we did a similar process to the big art and installed the community artwork. So just going to show that. Just, in addition to the call to artists, the national call to artists, we've also made a pretty good effort about reaching out to underrepresented groups of artists. And down at the waterfront, like this piece you can see here, we have Lillian Pitt, who's a Native American artist from Warm Springs. We have another one from, Yasmin Arlette Acosta Meyer that we had. And this one actually is going to rotate out, and we'll be working with a Native American artist, Toma, and he's going to be doing a 4-piece installation on this structure, this box-like structure. I think this year that's going to go at the library, so it's going to be a little better sited this year. Let's see. We've also made a really good effort reaching out to women artists, female artists. Typically, the responses have been mostly from men, and so it's just spending a little extra time and searching out female artists throughout the Oregon, Washington area. And this one is from a woman artist that you're probably familiar with, and I'm just spacing her name, but she's across the river in White Salmon. Everyone's, embraced this. Even the schools, there's been some teachers that have an annual art walk where they go out to the section of the art walk with their class, and beforehand the students will research an artist, and then at the site they'll give a presentation about the artist and the sculpture and their interpretation of the artwork, which literally just like blew me away. The children were just so into it and so thoughtful and so respectful of each other in general as they're doing their presentations outside. It's really impressive. This is another Latino artist, Francisco Salgado, and he's had a few pieces in the rotations. The one on the screen right now is Foster Kalama. We have also received numerous grants. This one, I believe, was from Oregon Arts Commission, where it was a $8,000 grant for him to develop a piece. And then that piece would be included in the art walk. And then he would have the option, or the artist would have the option to sell their piece. So not only did they get funding for the fabrication of their artwork, but they also were able to then sell the artwork. And the port was wise and visionary enough to purchase this one. It's really a phenomenal piece. And what we hear a lot about the art around the gorge is that it's really helps create a sense of place. And I don't know about you, but it's really great to say, like, hey, let's meet down by the Feather, or, you know, I'll meet you at the bus stop by the Horse, or you know, or up at Pine Street by the glass houses. This one is, I'll just call it, is this site is sponsored by a local business person, and it's really just been a lovely combination of public and private support. So it's not just public funding, but it's private developers and families have been supporting the art walk. And the program is about, I would say about a $60,000 program. A lot of the work is in kind. Well, about half of it is in kind, with the installations, the fundraising, the map production, the website production. So we raise about $30,000 in cash for about a $60,000 program. Well, this is another Latino artist, Sarah Ybarra from Port Townsend. And this piece is by CJ Wrench, and he's also one of the local artists that helped found the art of community. And he actually has donated this piece to the region for as long as that we want to keep it up and are happy with it. Probably about maybe 1 or 2 pieces each session is purchased. And so it's also an economic development opportunity for our local artists, which was actually a big reason for why we started in the first place. And also another big reason was really just for community to come together, another option for people to go out and do an activity that's not, you know, agro sports or, you know, I mean, it's just not for everyone. So I know when I have family come to town, you know, it's always like, oh, let's go on the art walk, and people really love it. So it's a great, another part of that economic development for the community. The tourists love it. The first year that we started this, I worked down at the Waterfront, and I saw this couple drive up to one of the sculptures, get out, and they took a flip phone and they just took a couple pictures, and then they sat down on the bench, and they were definitely, like, seems like over 80, and which I don't see a lot of over 80 down at the Waterfront. And so because it was published in the paper, it got out to a large group of people, and it really gets them out. And I would say interacting with the city and the other in different spots in the region. There was one other point I was going to make, but I can't remember. I think that was most of it. I think it's also just generated a lot of enthusiasm. And so people are already starting to talk about other potential larger grants that they could maybe team on with different agencies in the next few years. So it's really just been a jumping off point for all their future opportunities. So that's what I have. Thank you.
So it seems like the program's healthy. Is that a true statement?
Is the program healthy? Yes.
I don't want to see it stop.
I know. And I think the volunteers that do it, we love it, but it is a lot of work. I think it could be some of the finer elements that I personally do probably could be more sustainable if we had some help, which would probably just be a little bit extra, more secure funding. I think like the outreach to artists and things like that. But otherwise, yeah, it's totally healthy. But I keep seeing more opportunity for outreach, which I think would be great.
Please keep that. And holler if you need next change.
Oh, yeah. If you know of anyone. Not that I would leave, but could always use more help.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I know. Go work.
I will say that the last week alone, I saw probably 6 people interacting with the municipal.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
And I saw them interact with some kinds of so great.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you for continued support. It's been great. Thanks.
Mayor,
I can take care of that.
Mayor, if I could add a comment
Mayor?
to that.
Go ahead.
The reason, yes, Kristen, thank you for coming tonight to Urban Renewal, to present this to Urban Renewal, is that most of the art is in the Columbia Cascade or Waterfront Urban Renewal Districts. And we have traditionally, for the last several years, made a contribution to Art of Community for this. And I think this year it was 3,000 in this fiscal year and 3,000 in next fiscal year. We put it all together into one payment of $6,000. So that has already been taken care of you, but I wanted you to be aware of what the city's financial contribution is to the program.
It seems.
I have a comment to add.
Yeah, go ahead, Gladys.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the efforts that this group is doing to create that sense of place. I was wondering if there is or has been any opportunity where, elementary, middle school, high school students are also creating pieces that can be here out in the gorge. I know that when I was in elementary school, we had the opportunity to have handprints outside the school, and it's so fun to take my kiddos to see my little kindergarten handprint that's still at the school today. So have there been opportunities or conversations to have artwork created by students?
I am so glad you brought that up. Well, one, there is a local fabricator, WIT, who I think did start working with the high school and would love to continue that and do an installation with the students up there. That's just a matter, again, would be like getting a grant probably, because it'd be a significant time commitment to design and then fabricate with the students. So there is that option that, again, if I had a little more support with some of the outreach and like grant writing and some things like that, we could further grow that opportunity. The other thing is next summer, we had the thought that maybe we do a arts engagement day, and that I would maybe approach the city and other agencies around. It's in its infancy, but what I imagine it could be a something where we, let's say, one of the artists like CJ Rents, he has these, he makes a lot of models. And so children could like paint and glue gun their own sculptures. That was one idea. And another idea was like a scavenger hunt. So it'd be an interactive element with students or children. And then the third idea was potentially even like wood salmon or something, and students would be able to come down and paint the salmon, and then it could go perhaps in a waterfront at a large installation, maybe there's some chain link fence along between the park and the spit. So there's a few ideas like that going around. If somebody wanted to work with me on that, please just let me know. We'd love to do something.
Perfect. Thank you. And I really appreciate the efforts to connect with artists that represent the marginalized communities here in the gorge. So thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Their contribution that they've given to the walk is immeasurable. It's phenomenal. We also make an effort to translate a lot of the written words in our materials. So we could also use some help with that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kristen.
Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead. Is that
This is
Eric?
Eric. This is Eric Haney. I'm sorry I wasn't here for this. And thank you very much, Kristen, for this presentation. And if I could just have a couple of comments, because it's so rare that art issues come before either Urban Renewal or the City Council. And I'm just so thankful. And there's so many volunteers like you that are doing this. And it's such a at times thankless job. But I guess by way of encouragement, I've lived here and just enjoyed these art pieces and can just speak firsthand and testify that they just really facilitate kind of a shared experience and I guess purposeful conversations around them. And kind of taking it up a notch, in my humble opinion anyway, art and music are really kind of foundational to what it even is to have a community. I mean, you think about our local newspaper, you think about our local radio station, you think about all the kind of bricks and pieces that make community. Well, I think personally speaking, one of them really is art and music, not only because of the kind of beautification factor, but just this kind of institution of art. I mean, and particularly at this time where we have just such enormous political division, the medium of art is just this way of kind of bringing people together. It's a bridge, it divides, and it just by displaying our commonalities and highlighting the human experience, I just think it's so valuable and kind of defining of the community. So I know it's kind of abstract, but I really view this as kind of one of the arteries of our community, is just having these ways of having different groups in the community kind of display and facilitate conversation. It's just enormously valuable, and I thank you for your volunteerism.
Thank you, Eric. That was really beautifully said, because that was the one point I was trying to recall, was that it does create discussion, and agreed during these divisive times. It's definitely a safe, fun way to connect with people and create discussion. So thank you.
Thank you. I think that's no more comments. Okay, I just want to make sure. All right, we have another presentation, Port of Hood River presentation regarding waterfront urban renewal. Michael McKelvey.
Well, good evening. Thanks for the chance to be here in front of you. It's hard to follow the art community in any presentation. Those are amazing images, amazing art that has enriched this community. This is an unartful name for a presentation, the Multimodal Street and Transit Hub, but that's what we'll go with. But some of you may know that I'm retiring from the port in July. So perhaps there's an additional little measure of grace and maybe a couple of extra minutes from Will to be able to talk to you and add some personal comments to this. So there's 4 parts to this presentation, if I can work this correctly. And where's the next one?
You can, multiple ways to do it. Either just slide through there like that, or you can do it while, I don't know, keyboard doesn't seem to be working.
So just, okay, I'll get this. All right, 4 parts: context, a little bit of historical context, and then some key planning efforts that have gone on, a specific update on the projects we've been working on, and a little bit of kind of thoughts for urban renewal. Context, 2007, this is the first time we could get a clear air photo of the waterfront. That perimeter, which is now called the sandbar, is about 1 million cubic yards of material. And the perimeter of that area is about 80 acres. That was a seminal transformation of waterfront that occurred, and I had started in July of that year. In November of that year, the lateral moraine of the Elliott Glacier collapsed, and that material came down the watershed in about 5 hours. Remarkable. If you look at that same air photo and focus on the central waterfront, this is what you'd see. The good news is that the port had just built 2nd Street, connecting Riverside over the Portway. But if you look around, the port's boneyard was at the corner of 8th and Portway Avenue. The Jensen building was empty. The Expo building was lightly used. And there's no waterfront park, much less any continuous trail on there. In fact, at the northeast corner of the Jensen building property, there was a chain link fence right at the edge of the, that's one of the first things that we tried to change. Going backwards. Look at it today. You all know what's down there. Not only the art of community everywhere, you have a continuous pedestrian bicycle trail, the beautiful waterfront park is there, Portway Avenue is renovated. All of these things happen. And our estimate of the private investment that went into the waterfront is about $70 million, 650 jobs, a tremendous transformation that happened in less than 15 years. That transformation happened in large part because of partnerships, not only with permitting agencies, but also with private developers and equity participants. But really importantly, it happened because of this partnership between the port and the city. That's something that has been integral to everything that's happened down there. We're nested together. And the highlighted projects there that you see are specific projects where the port had a financial role or participated with the city to some extent. You see the initial land donation, Bob Francis called in 2007 and said he needed 120,000. The commission approved that. There's a slug of projects that happened starting in 2009. All of those were port loans to the Urban Renewal Agency. The waterfront urban renewal area has never had to issue debt. And in large parts because the growth of the district, and in part in the early years, it's because of loans from the port. In the early years, it wasn't at all clear that those loans could be paid back. There was no roadmap. There was no certainty that the growth would occur down there. So the total of a little over $4 million. And then there's the studies and analyses and plans that go along with all that. And here again, you see a continuous commitment on the port and the city to this effort to constantly envision, imagine the waterfront, understand what the values of the community are and what the public policy objectives, and then through a planning effort, how to manifest those. The highlighted ones were the ones where the port and the city had particular collaboration. And we'll talk about the waterfront refinement plan a little bit later. So about 435. So total, you have almost $4.5 million of this would be port investment. So let's look at the planning efforts a little bit. I'm not going to go through all these. This only represents some of the major studies and plans that have occurred since 2006. It doesn't include the multiple major efforts that occurred before then, some of which you were around for. But this is just within this 15-year time frame. I want to focus on two of those briefly. The Waterfront Refinement Plan in 2014. Will has talked to you about this before, but this essentially created an overlay over the waterfront. And the port and the city each contributed half the money to do that work. And the intent of both of us was try to establish with some degree of certainty what the expectations were for the waterfront. And that manifests itself in this overlay zone, sort of mini overlay zones within that, define these sub areas that had specific standards and design guidelines and a variety of other things. The Waterfront Refinement Plan led to changes in the Hood River Municipal Code. So the zoning ordinance was modified and included the overlay zone. I point these two graphics out in part because it shows that direct connection. The Walker-Macy plan in early 2014 was literally utilized and is embedded in the zoning code to demonstrate what the expectations were for that whole west edge of the Nichols Basin. So it defined a certain distance from the event site south, in which there could be no buildings of any type. That allows the Nichols Park to come up and confront First Street and expand the park by about 3/4 acres. It also defined a continuous esplanade along the upper bank and significant commitments to plaza space and other public amenities, including a public restroom. So that diagram that came from Waukesha is actually in the code right now. The second major planning effort is the public infrastructure framework plan. Here is where we tried to take not only the refinement plan, but the zoning code and the prior studies that were done, particularly around Lot 1. And we tried to identify the specific construction projects. What would you need to do to implement those values and those visions and that concept? So this infrastructure plan became very important to then provide an action blueprint for what to do. There were two baskets of project in there. One were enhancement projects and the other were basic infrastructure projects. Enhancement projects we'll start with, and these were mostly concentrated on the west edge of the Nichols Basin. You see park expansion, the plazas, enhancements to the roads, riparian edge, accessibility from not only ADA standpoint, but light watercraft. Those projects, each one of them had a concept diagram and had an order of magnitude cost estimate. In 2021 dollars, each one of those projects had this particular estimate applied to it. So total, there's been several projects further identified since then, but about $3.2 million. And like I said, the refinement plan had specific concept diagrams and cost estimates for each one of these. Two examples, here's the ADA overlook and enhancements to the riparian edge. The second basket of projects we call basic infrastructure. Here's the street, here's the utilities, here's those things, the frame you need to have to allow for these expansions and the enhancement projects and potential development on Lot 1. Focus on Anchor Way and First Street as the two major ones. The one that's emerged more prominently is the transit hub. The need to have a location that's visible and proximate and allows for the integration of the different smaller transit systems that are in the gorge. And we see transit as being a fundamental platform for what we all want to see, which less cars on the road and more ability people to get from where they live to where they work, and also for recreational users to come down without having to drive a car. Fewer projects identified there, but there were four major ones. First Street is cut into north and south. Portway Avenue first, really, really important. And then Anchor Way and the transit hub. So the much more expensive price tag in 2021 dollars, $8.3 million. And as with the enhanced projects, there were specific cut sheets for each one with diagrams and estimates. There's First Street, north and south. All right, let's focus on the multimodal street and public transit hub project. I should come up with an acronym or a shorter name for that. What?
He's very alliterative.
Okay. So as an update, we retained KPF Engineering and Waukesha, who've done significant work in this area on the waterfront. This is the concept plan for Anchor Way, which is a green street. It adds parking. It importantly adds the utilities that would allow for not only the development or improvement along the Nichols Basin edge, west edge, but also north and south. And then there's a reference to the swerve, which is that north-south head bike access that would bisect Lot 1. And they further worked on engineering plans. We're about the 15% engineering level for that street. This is just simply one of the sheets out of their plan set. First Street had a concept plan as well. This conjoins north and south. And this, again, moves First Street away from the edge of the top of Bank, expands the park space at the north end, And then it's not shown here, but south of Anchor Way, there would be an allowance for some small retail or commercial buildings. The intent being to enliven that edge, make it richer and more active, and having smaller pedestrian scale, either buildings or kiosks. And same threshold, 15% engineering plans have been prepared for that street and updated cost estimates. This bundle of projects is on the 22 SEDS list, listed as number 6. But the point is that this has been identified as something that's important to do and recognized by the county and the McKed board. We've got several important letters of support. We appreciate the one from the city of Hood River. Thank you. Importantly, and Kat's an important partner here to drive through, and we'll talk about it in a second, the one particular grant. But look to the letter on the left. That's the letter from Travis Brower that says this project, these projects are on the STIP. And if they're expanded, they will also be, the expanded projects will be on the STIP. That's really, really important for federal funding in particular. So it's a significant acknowledgement right there. Don't forget that one of those plans that was done before was the Interchange Access Management Plan. And the IMP said that Anchor Way, that connection is really important to, in the future, if there's a left-hand egress on Riverside is not allowed, the traffic will have to go northbound, come back to the interchange southbound. So the so-called right-in, right-out access only. And so Anchor Way is important. It's important to ODOT because it's on the IMP. Now it's on the STIP, and it allows for that second level egress from the area where the hotel is and the medical office building. Project costs. These have been updated in January. We've had a healthy contingency in them. Prices are really moving fast. About $4.3 million of hard costs for construction when you add the engineering and project management. It's about 4.3 for those two combined projects. We have $1 million committed through an IOF grant, Immediate Opportunity Fund grant. That's an ODOT commitment, and we were able to get the higher level, which was 500 instead of 250, because of the importance they place on this. We have an Oregon Rpa Grant, and the port has committed in its budget to a little over $1 million. Pending, we have 3. The FHWA grant is driven by CAT, and that's focused just on the transit hub, those assets or those component parts of the project that are related to transit. That's pending. We don't know the answer. We have submitted a congressionally directed spending grant with Senator Merkley's office. That's pending. The big one is the EDA grant, $2.9 million, a very, very significant grant that if we were able to obtain it, it would really drive both of these conjoined projects to happen at the same time. That one is also pending. So we'll see all 3 of those, but the big one that we're looking for is the EDA. So we have more in committed and pending money than we need to do the projects, but it's likely that we're not going to get all 3 of these grants at the same time. All right, urban renewal. You all know the outlines of the Waterfront Urban Renewal District, 109 acres from the hook to the footbridge. These were the projects identified when the plan was prepared. And whenever you prepare a plan and you identify projects, you anticipate the best you can what those investments that are needed or optimum to drive private investment and add to the vitality of the area and decrease blight. These are the projects done when the plan was prepared. Several of them, many of them are done. Some of them are not done. And some of them were aspirational. Some of them aren't as necessary now, but there are several of these category projects that are not completed. I put this slide in thanks to Will, who's much better at PowerPoint than I am. But it's just a reminder of how the urban renewal district works. The frozen base is established, and then investments are made, and private investment drives the value, the assessed value of the assets there. So over time, your increment should increase over the base, and that increment is used then to pay off loans and debt. But I also wanted to use this slide because if you go back to that 2022 era photo, the Waterfront Urban Renewal District is one of the most successful that has happened in the state of Oregon. And if you look at the percentage of tax increment that's been allocated versus the payoff in terms of incremental growth, it's propped up as one of the best in the state. This has been very, very successful district. It's been urban renewal is a really important tool, a key tool, along with those partnerships and other investment. And here's another slide from Will, and I put this in primarily just to state the obvious, which is the downtown district will end at some point, probably reasonably soon. The Heights is just taking off, and the Waterfront Urban Renewal District is the one that's nearing it's reaching its maximum indebtedness. So the decision would need to be, then do we change that, or do we just let it go? And of course, I understand that you have another urban district that's on your mind as well. And here are all the various taxing jurisdictions that are made up. The three that are the largest by far would be, of course, the city, the county, and the school district. Okay, so here are some options to think about. This is taken in part from the work that Elaine Howard did, and we failed to introduce Elaine at the beginning, but you know Elaine. She prepared the analysis that's in your packet, and this is drawn from her work. The first option is to just terminate, and it's not really an active action. It's simply the maximum indebtedness is used. There's no further opportunity for utilization of the increment. The district ends, the tax base is restored to the taxing jurisdiction. That would free up 109 acres if the interest is to utilize that for another urban renewal district. The second basket of options is to increase the maximum indebtedness. You can do that with and Elaine will check me if I say something wrong, but that's a major plan amendment that does not require 75% approval of taxing jurisdiction. And based on the levy from this district, a 1 year is about $800,000 to $900,000. 2 year would double that. And Elaine can explain better than I can, but there is a statutory allowance for, based on the CPI that was identified when the plan was prepared, for the council or the urban renewal board to allow that district to the MI to increase up to a certain threshold, and that threshold is somewhere around 1.8, maybe $1.9 million. And then a variation of that is to under levy. So you return some of the tax base to the taxing jurisdictions, but you retain some of it, let's say half, and then you increase the maximum indebtedness amount, but then you also allow the district to proceed for several years until that MI is reached. So those are multiple options under that category. You can also increase the maximum indebtedness above 1.8 million, but that rules require the 75% approval, which is undoubtedly would require significant outreach and approval. And then in combination with maximum indebtedness options, there are options to decrease the size of the district. I have actually 4 to show you briefly concepts, but these are just examples. You could decrease the district down to where it only has 20 acres, and you retain within those 20 acres some modicum of that increment generation, but you return 85% of the district to another district or to utilize for, say, the west side. There's another option of 15 and then 10, each one getting smaller, but each one having to be thoughtful about what land is still in the smaller district and making sure there's increment generation within those remaining properties. And then a final option is to let this URA go and establish a limited property district, a new one, sometimes called a bootstraps district. So essentially, you're utilizing a certain amount of property, and the investment that's made by others would get paid back only if there was increment generated. And Elaine's identified that in her report as well. Here's just a visual of what those might look like. Again, these are just examples. There's a myriad ways to do it. 20 acres, focus on the east end of the waterfront, 15 smaller version. 10 acres would just be the lot one and that whole west edge of the basin. Bootstrap districts might be something that just focuses on lot one or lot one at Barman. Those properties are only held by the port, so it'd essentially be a port-focused new district. So there's multiple considerations. Here's just a few of them. I understand there's interest in the West Side district and the size of that district. There's a 25% cap of lands that can be in URAs within a city limits. Of course, returning the tax base to the taxing jurisdictions. That's part of the idea. You invest, increment grows, and ultimately that goes back to those taxing jurisdictions. But there's also many public policy objectives to be achieved on the waterfront. It can be achieved, and urban and rural can be a tool. And then I mentioned the IMP requirements, and that's one that eventually will have to be addressed. That alternate egress point, right in, right out, and potentially other improvements. So these are in the form of questions, but they're just potential actions. The primary question is whether the board and the council would like to have further analysis done on some or all of these options. Is there enough interest to say, let's evaluate these, let's come back with more numeric description, variety of alignments of what the new district might be, if the board and council would like to go in that direction. And that would be work that would be done likely by Elaine and her team, and the port would pay for that to be done. And then second, of course, is what are those objectives? And it's not a question perhaps to be answered tonight, but what are those objectives? What would you want to achieve if the district was extended? That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you,
Probably
Michael.
the last time I'll be speaking for you in this setting, so it's kind of an honor to be here. So thanks.
Well,
and
thank you
Elaine
for
is here, and we're here to answer questions.
Thank you for the history of all of that. So brings everybody up to speed from everything that's going on down there. Not everything, but everything in the last 20 years-ish. Major stuff anyway. I think you said it. I mean, we have another district we're thinking about right now. And I think we'd like to have that acreage, or the bulk, at least the bulk of that acreage in the new district. But that's a lot of information to give us. And thank you for the packet that you gave. You gave us some pre-information before bringing this to us. And I don't know if we're ready to get into a full discussion, just getting this information that you just gave us tonight, to get into a full discussion on it before we kind of internalize it and take all that information in. Yeah, go ahead, Megan.
Thanks for coming, Michael. Just for my clarity, and I might have missed something in the presentation, but it looked like between money you've already secured and then pending grants, that you would have covered everything you want to cover for improvements. Is that correct, or did I miss something?
Yes, if the grants are successful, absolutely. I think we're there.
Okay. So I guess what would be your ask, given you potentially don't need any money, assuming everything worked out? I mean, you've been very successful at getting outside money, so even if those grants didn't work out, others might. Like, what are you asking for? What would you need?
Yeah, great question, Counselor. if we're not successful with the EDA grant in particular, there's going to be a deficit in terms of the funding to do those two streets together. If we didn't have that grant, one option would be to just do Anchor Way. But First Street remains where it is. It's a decrepit street. It's too close to the bank and all that. It could be that urban renewal could play a role in getting that transportation framework. Getting those two streets done at the same time has a lot of, allows for additional space and such. But if we were successful to get those grants or enough to be able to do both projects, there would still be, we wouldn't have funding to do a whole myriad of those enhanced projects. So ADA accessibility plazas, the expansion of the space, there would be no money available to do that. And so it would have to essentially be a street, and we will seed it and there will be grass, but there will be nothing else. So it really depends on the success in grants. I don't see a big opportunity to get a significant grant like 2.9 million again in the near future. I may be wrong, but there's sort of a one-time confluence of events that are occurring. And so the challenge remains uncertain, but it's because we have to find out how successful we are. Either way, though, there's an opportunity for urban renewal to be a really important player and play an important role in doing these projects that people will really add to that activity and vitality of the waterfront, or alternatively, just to get the basic streets done.
When will you know about the grant? Do you have any idea on time frame?
We believe we're assuming we'll have a good idea, meaning the first threshold for the EDA grant here within 2 to 3 weeks.
Oh, soon.
It's coming soon. Now, it's not the end. There's a threshold you pass, but once you pass that, the odds are pretty good. I'm not sure the timing for the other two smaller grants, but hopefully within the next month or so.
I have just a bigger, broader question. I know that we played a role, the city, you guys have played a role with infrastructure down there, but then also private development has helped with some of the infrastructure. And so have you guys investigated? I thought you had put out some feelers, I don't know what you want to call it, within the last 2 years, maybe, of people that would want to do something down there that would help contribute to some of that infrastructure? Or you haven't done any of that?
In terms of contributions to infrastructure investment?
Right,
No.
right. That, someone that would have an interest in building there.
Yeah, no, that's down the road. We really have to get that utility in the street infrastructure to have something that we can, that someone would be incented enough to contribute. So in particular for Lot 1, each of those property owners are very engaged and interested in helping and supporting, but not to the scale we're talking about here. Not at this time.
But you haven't gone out with an official, bring us your ideas kind of a thing.
For certain development on Lot 1, no.
No, okay,
No.
that's what I was wondering.
That infrastructure is just, it's a precondition, I believe, to getting to the point where you can engage like that.
Questions?
So, I'm just bummed that I like this project a ton, and the fact that the money went out of storm pipe is just depresses me.
Our fates.
But there's no choice there. Do you have a sense for how much for these smaller districts? I'm trying in my mind to decide, think through my support of a littler waterfront district and still going forward with the west side, which is super important, right? I mean, that's an area that's just ripe for needed development in a whole bunch of different ways. As you get the smaller and smaller new waterfront district, it affects how much indebtedness we can draw on it. And do you have a sense of, does the 10 acre give us all the money we need for everything we want to do, or is there a 6 acre one that's even? 2
too.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but that's where that further analysis is needed, because there's a kind of a conjunction between, the assessed value that remains in the district, what needs to be done, the MI, what the potential payout period. In my view, and not doing any sort of analysis, it's that sort of 15 to 20 that can work. You need a driver. Optimally, you need a driver. And you look to the hotel. I don't think the hotel has ever, or only maybe perhaps recently, paid taxes. We had a deferral 5-year.
Whichever it was, it just came back on the rolls on this last tax year, the one or the year before.
So there's a tax deferral for that hotel project, which is an enterprise zone eligibility. So there's an engine down there that can drive this. So the MI is a certain amount. The remaining tax increment, what can be generated, that'll determine how long until you either pay off the debt or reimburse the loans. So it works at a smaller scale, but it's a lot riskier. So to me, there's a 15 to 20 acre kind of optimum. And that, I don't know what you're looking at in terms of the west side, but that would turn 80 acres or so. So a significant amount of the waterfront that could be used for other things.
Others?
I'd like to say something if it's okay. Michael, thank
Yeah,
you
Go ahead.
so much for the presentation. I think that it gives a lot of background and a lot of information for the counselors to consider. The one thing I want just to stress, which you also stressed, is that, I look at this as there's two components that I think really, as you always mindfully say, is helps the port be stewards to the land that is given to them or that we're in management of. And the two components I think that the council really should be thinking about and focusing on or the Urban Renewal Agency, is that we have an opportunity to help with public transportation a great deal. And we also have an opportunity to potentially make a big public space, a festival boulevard that can be used for events and activities and some other more public spaces that is kind of the postage stamp of Hood River, being the very, very visible waterfront. And I think that all of us as stewards to the constituents of not only the port, but to the city, it's such an important section of land for Hood River. I think that any beautification that we can do to that area is going to help downtown businesses. It's just going to help the entire community in general. So I think that we should be, definitely thinking about how we can make this a win-win situation while maximizing the west side section, which is equally as important.
Thanks, Chrissy. Tim?
Michael, thank you so much for the presentation, as always, very well put together and logically presented. So I really appreciate that. Do you have a feel for value that would be added by the improvements? We presented, I think we've estimated, how much value the other parts of the waterfront district have generated.
So in terms of
Jobs, tax benefits.
Well, that's a really interesting question. I'm not sure if I can answer it, but I did want to say that the street network that's being proposed is agnostic to the future development. We have developed a kind of a build-out plan of Lot 1, and if I remember right, it's maybe 140,000 square feet, and it's all based on urban design principles, the buildings at the street, central parking, ped bike environment, all that. But it's also true that there may be alternate visions for Lot 1 that are different. And I've heard discussion about, the recreational complex or soccer fields. And so just want to stress that you need to do those streets no matter what. You can't develop anything there without getting that network in place. But once in place, it's still up to council, it's up to the board, it's up to whatever the market conditions are and what the values and objectives are at the time to determine what occurs. The north half could be recreation, the south half something else. So it really depends on that if-then scenario. We could model it based on what the build-out assumption is, and you go 140,000 times and get a number. But I'm not sure if that's really ultimately going to be what occurs there. That'll be up to future councils and boards. So again, I'm not answering your question, Councilor, but we can do that estimate, and that's what Elaine and her team would do, is help us all understand what specifically those options and trade-offs are and the numeric impact. But ultimately, it'll be up for future land use decisions.
So part of this is obviously a timing issue as well. I mean, the potential for the West Side Urban Renewal District coming on and the imperative need for affordable housing and various other aspects that would be dealt with through that process. Then there is the need by taxing districts for the tax funds that are scheduled to be freed up for them to use. So I mean, in your opinion, you think this is like a very time sensitive, like we need to do it the next 3 years or it's not going to get done. I mean, those are some of the things that I'm trying to wrestle with in my head. What's the timing of it and what's more?
Yeah, no, it's very pressing. Absolutely, I believe this is a time sensitive matter. It's the confluence or conjunction of the Columbia Cascade District and when's that going to end? It's the need for a West Side Urban Renewal District, and it's also the opportunity that remains for, and not to mention those objectives that you mentioned are really important, but also the opportunity that remains for the Waterfront District about what to do with it. And the three are coming together about the same time. And like we spoke about, the grant picture, when that gets clearer, then we'll have a better idea of what some of the possibilities are. But I believe this is something that the board and the council could think about and to kind of grapple with, because there's trade-offs. But I also believe strongly there's a way to do both. You don't have to get rid of this child to get this child. I think you can have the whole family. So maybe, except for Columbia Cascade, I gotta let go of that. So.
No, thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
really do appreciate that. And always have appreciated your presentation.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Eric, do you have any questions or any comments?
Yes, Mayor, I appreciate that. And I guess, Michael, first of all, thank you for your leadership down at the port. That sort of calm, thoughtful cadence that we just heard, I think has been typical of your leadership down there, and just appreciate your way and your thoughtful leadership down there. And I echo Mark's sentiment that, it's unfortunate that part of the reason that there is this shortage, if we want to call it, does have to do with that unanticipated stormwater event that we solved. We didn't raise rates on ratepayers. We used the cash that we had, and here we are. But the other thought that comes to mind, just a little bit bigger picture, in 8-10 years, we may have, if all goes according to plan, we have this new bridge, which is great, but Michael would know off the top of his head, but I want to say $5-6 million of port revenue, which of course is not tied directly to urban renewal, but the port as an entity, I think over the next 10 years will be constricting rather than growing. And I'm just sitting here listening, thinking it would be nice to kind of button up the infrastructure before that happens, because there just won't be as much resource wealth generally at the port. And I think the marriage between the port and the city, which we always should be working on, and that's a whole nother topic, but there's probably going to be more tugs between those two entities as those larger resources start to go down as a result of what I can only assume will be a federal kind of pivot of all those bridge tolls. And it seems to me we here have the port offering to do the analysis, so we don't have the usual circumstance of burdening staff with some complex analysis. So I guess just my 2 cents would be that we, if the port's willing to do the analysis to give us the information that might inform whether we can perhaps keep the port district open, that would seem to be a way to approach it, you know, to get an intentional result as opposed to just making the determination without that analysis. So I guess I'm just trying to say I'm warm to the idea of taking Michael up on the offer to receive more information so that we can, you know, make an informed decision. And perhaps there is and it sounds like in fact there is a creative way to adjust the dials here so we can have this win-win kind of both ways going forward with both districts, the West Side District, of course, moving forward. You know, and I do think Lot 1, the point was made a few minutes ago, maybe not in reference to Lot 1 specifically, but I'll call it out by name. There is just such an opportunity there to make a landmark something for our community. And I have my own personal wish list for Lot 1, but I guess I take Michael's point that we really have to get the infrastructure in down there. And then once it's in, we can all, as a community, come together and decide what to do with Lot 1. But it doesn't seem advantageous to just have it kind of go unfinished when the port's resources, I think, will be going down, not up, over the next 10 years. So I would be in favor of learning more about what options might exist so we can kind of make an intentional, thoughtful decision relative to balancing the pros and the cons of these two districts.
Thanks, Eric. Gladys?
Thank you so much, Michael, for being here today, for this presentation, for the amazing years of service that you contributed, and for explaining the overall vision. I did want to ensure that, I mean, I like the idea of just exploring options, but I also don't want to commit our city staff and due to their bandwidth. So is this something that your team can take on as far as researching what possibilities can be as opposed to city staff?
Councillor, yes. Elaine Howard is one of the best in the state. And we're able to move this forward based on a scope of work that's consistent with what you want to take a look at, what options to explore. So absolutely.
Thank you for that. I'm also hopeful, though, that this grant funding can come through. That would be a significant amount of dollars.
We share that wish.
I guess one of the questions might be is, if you waited 2 weeks and you were like at the top of the list and it looks really good for the grant, you would maybe not go ahead with this idea. Is that true? Or you still would want to, regardless of if you got the grant?
We would, at least I'll speak for myself, I do believe that this further analysis is important to do, and I think we would want to at least explore that idea. It goes back to the fact that the infrastructure is one thing, but all those other enhancements, the accessibility to the water, the plazas, the developed park space, all those things that will enhance that whole edge and achieve significant public policy objectives, they would just languish. So it might be a smaller package of improvements to consider. It might be, just a smaller package. But I still think this is an opportunity to at least consider that idea. If it's not infrastructure, it's those other enhancements that we all love, people enjoy.
Will this assessment be completed by the time that you find out about the grant?
Well,
Elaine's shaking her head no.
Not in 2 weeks.
No.
we're probably looking at a couple months.
Yeah, a month to a month and a half.
And there's usually a long tail on these grants. I don't have a specific date. If we get through the first threshold, then there will be others to go through. So there's a lot of work to do before we're certain.
I think that, at least I've heard a couple other people talk about the west side and myself, just to continue on with the district we have, with the acreage of the district we have at the port. Personally, and I think I heard this from at least a couple other people, that they didn't want to do that because they want to take that acreage, at least the bulk of the acreage, and put it over to the west side. Now, potentially, if it was only going to be one more year, we wouldn't be ready for west side yet anyway. But if it ended up being 2 or 3 or 5 or however much longer, then that would affect the west side. So I think I'm hearing that people are very concerned about the west side plan, and if it was a smaller district or reformed or something, that might be a better idea versus just enlarging and continuing. Is that what I heard from? Okay, yeah, I don't know how much work Elaine would need to do all these different scenarios. So, if there was some that we were like, that is one we are not going to go down, then I would hate for you to have to do that work and then have us just that's not going to happen.
Will, can you clarify? I thought we could have a West Side Urban Renewal District set up this year.
No, we're waiting on the Waterfront district to expire. With the pause, we took that COVID pause in collection, and that pushed out the West Side district another year. Paused a year, so it's going to exist a year longer. See, I think.
Okay, but I mean, like, it's not that we wouldn't get our work done and it can't happen this year. We're waiting for it to close for it to happen.
Oh, it's going to be a tight timeline for me to get it done for it to. I think we can. I think, yeah, the goal would be to have everything adopted by by the end of December 2023.
Okay.
For it to pick up right where Waterfront leaves off.
And if there's a new waterfront district that's 2.3 acres, and that has to just get carved out of the west side during that timeline, I assume, right?
We could keep it in mind.
Like, we can keep these things, they can do the study to say, okay, if it's 10 acres and there's this much indebtedness, or 3 different options, let's say, does that derail your west side plan? I guess that's my question.
So I might ask Elaine to help with this a little bit about when exactly we need to define the boundaries. But if like that bootstrap district, I think that would be pretty negligible impact to the size of the west side.
But when you call it a bootstrap, is that similar to an LID?
It's basically a localized enterprise zone agreement. Yeah. 1 or 2 parcels, basically saying whatever's invested in that will be repaid from the tax increment generated from the development itself. So it's basically like a reverse enterprise zone. But
I don't know that we should make a decision tonight. I guess that's because it seems like we don't have quite enough information, and we've gotten a lot of information, almost too much information, all these different scenarios, all the timing for the west side, and to make that decision without having all that written down in front of us, it gets a little muddled. So I guess I'd prefer to have it all laid out, like I said, so we don't have a lane. If we're going to choose to do that and have the port give us some numbers, it feels like we should have it laid out a little bit better.
yeah, so what I'm hearing though is a pretty broad consensus of not just extending the deadline and increasing the maximum indebtedness writ large, kind of the go big option. It'd be something like narrowing in scope quite a bit, substantially, one of those options. Just general thoughts of the council without any commitments one way or the other.
I think that's what I've heard in general.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay.
One thing, excuse me, one thing that might help is we can work with Elaine to define a conceptual scope of work that you can consider. Because it's pretty clear that the objective is to reduce, not objective. One possibility is to reduce the size of the district substantially. And so that starts to help us define what Elaine's scope of work would be in order to bring back some options. So we could develop a draft scope of work that you, for consideration, and that might help your the board's decision making. Meaning what specific options would be analyzed and how long it would take and that sort of thing. So you have something to mull over.
Yeah, and I think if you, Abigail, and Will could coordinate with Michael and Elaine, not to take up a lot of staff time, but you know, if they could just check in with you to make sure that nothing's going off the rails from what,
Yeah, one more
because you
thing,
can be touching in with us all the time.
one more thing to just off the bat be narrowing down scope is one, we're hearing not the go big, massive option. Also, the options that take a lot of staff time, such as the options that would require getting 75% concurrence from the overlapping districts. Can we rule those out? Rule that out as well?
Yeah, I
help us
think
narrow
so.
down.
I mean, because if we're gonna go see about doing a West Side
Mhm.
plan, we've been talking to Parks and Rec about what they might do, and just, you know, that just adds another layer on top of all those other things that we're gonna be talking to those other governmental bodies about. I just, I don't think that's gonna be a good idea.
Thanks, that's helpful to rule as much out as possible. Thanks.
All right. All right, thank you so much for your presentation. Do we have any other regular business items this evening?
We do not.
Okay. Any urban renewal agency members have anything specific individually? Hearing none, we're going to adjourn. Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and open or reopen the Hood River City Council meeting. Do we have any business from the audience? Go and sign up. Okay. All right. We have another presentation. Oh, fantastic. We have Jackson Park Projects, Mike Shen. Thank you for waiting so long, Mike.
That's okay.
Got to hear all about urban renewal.
That was interesting.
Yes.
Well, okay, I'm Mike Shen. This is Greg Simpson. We're representing the River Lions Club, and we are proposing to make some improvements to Jackson Park. And so we don't have any fancy presentation. We're going to have you use your imagination. Okay, so we're going to try and give you an oral description of it, and then you can ask questions and so forth. I will tell you before we get started here, we've got approval from your Public Works Department. We met with Mark, your former Public Works Director, and he endorsed it. And then we met with Travis, your former.
We wish they weren't former.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then we've also met with Adam, your current employee, and they've all endorsed this. So that process has been done. So, but let me give you an idea of what we're talking about. The park, as you know, is not handicap friendly. Once you get down in that bowl, without help, you can't get back out. And you really can't go to the restroom on your own. There's no way to get up there unless someone pushes you in a wheelchair and so forth. And it's still difficult even at that. So the Lions Club looked at this possibility to make some improvements for handicap accessibility. And let me give you a description of what we're going to do here, what we're planning to do. We are looking at improving 2,385 square feet of blacktop. That would include, if you give you a visual here, you know, the concrete posts that are back in the south corner of that parking lot between the ball field and the park. You know what I'm talking about? Okay, those posts would now be gone. And the handicap parking would be on the other side of those posts, south side of those posts, where they are currently located. All of the pavement from that point basically back and all the way to the restroom would be removed and repaved. All of that. It's a mess back there. I mean, it's a tripping hazard. I mean, it's not good, but this will be nice because it'll all be new. It'll all be graded back for handicapped codes. And so it'll be all feathered back and excavated for that purpose. And over by the restrooms, just west of the restrooms, we're proposing to put in a concrete seating area for wheelchairs and handicapped individuals. It'd be 20 feet long and 5 feet 4 inches wide. It would have a curb and then also a 16-inch rail going all the way around the front, because that's up on a little bit of a ledge there, if you know what I'm talking about. So it's a safety issue. So that's all like ADA standard stuff. So that would all be done, and the city, we were asking, if you approve this, would be to sign it and put the markings on the new parking spots. And your Public Works Department said yes. So I'm hoping you would say yes to that.
How many parking spaces might you know?
There'll be 2. Now, these would be large enough for vans. You know, you could probably get 3 in there, but we want to have big enough space so small buses even, or a van could go in there with multiple people in the van. So they'd be quite large, actually. And so anyway, that's what that proposal is on that side. We also have, there's also a safety issue with, you can't get down from the parking lot down to the park safely unless you walk around both sides all the way around. So what we're proposing to do is put a step system, a stairway system, concrete, going down from about the middle of the park, you know where that electrical panel is up there? It's up on a big board. It's right there on the middle, about the middle of the park. And it's all the electrical panels.
On the east side of the stage?
No, I'm talking about up on the parking lot, up on the parking lot.
Oh, okay.
There's an electrical.
Oh, I know where you're talking about.
Yeah.
Above where the picnic area
Yeah,
is.
right next to that is where we're proposing to go in with the concrete steps. It would kind of go at an angle coming off and then have a landing and then go straight down to that pad that's in the park now. The reason it's angling over is there's 2 trees there. We don't want to disrupt the root base, so they would not be harming those trees. They would have double railings on both sides, and it would also have lights embedded into the concrete on the steps. They would be on a timer, so they would go off at like 10 p.m. I know you don't want a lot of messing around in the park at night, so the lights would turn off. But they would be on, say for the concerts as an example, they would be on until everybody's out of the park. But it gives access safely down that hillside, because right now, I don't know how many people I've seen fall going down that hillside. And when we do the concerts, which the Lions now have taken on, there's no way to have vendors taking food down to that pad. This allows that. From up above, they can come down with their food and then serve it down below. Okay, so that's the second piece of this. We're also going to propose on that electrical board that I'm talking about where the steps begin, we're going to install 220 amp power up there. There's only 110 up there now. And for any vendors or food carts, they need 220. So for anybody up there, they can't hook up. There's nothing they could do. So we're going to install some 220 power up there as well. Okay. The last thing that we're proposing is on coming in from the northwest park, the main walkway down goes by the stage. Okay. There's about 20 linear feet of uneven and broken concrete. It's so we're going to replace that. So with all of that, it's about $92,000. We want to invest from the Lions Club into that park. We've sort of, I'd say we've adopted that park, you know, and, you know, I think with the improvement to the stage, with the with the canopy now structure and this, that'll be over $300,000 that we put in 2 years into that park. So, you know, and I talked to Adam, you weren't there, but I talked to Adam and he had another idea. He said, geez, we really would like to see some work on the east side on that bank. You know, the pipes are sticking out, you know, and all that kind of stuff, and some really nice landscaping in there. I told him, you know, he's welcome to make a proposal to the Lions Club, and maybe for next year we can look at that. But this is something that I think is really needed in that park. There's parking. There's really no parking for anybody that's handicapped. They have to come from a long ways into the park, and when they get down there, it's just a real tough situation for them to get anywhere when they're down there. So this gives them their own area up on top, beautiful view of the stage from there. And I think it's right next to the restrooms. It's absolutely perfect. Parking, seating, restroom, right there, right together. So that's our proposal. And if we would get approval from you, we would hire Schubach and Lanes Paving to do this. And they said that they could get it done by the end of July. So it would be done for the concerts.
For families in the park. Wow.
Well, you have that too, but we wanted to pinch it in between the 4th of July and the concerts, and they said they could do that. So that's a bonus in itself. The way the contractors are right now, even anytime you can get it when you want it is a miracle.
Yeah. Well, the locals, you know, they know how important it is. They're stepping up to try and put it in there. I see heads nodding all around. I can't see Eric and Gladys. But questions, you guys?
This is really brief, but one, thank you. This sounds amazing. And I appreciate you guys taking such good care of a city
Well,
park.
we're happy to do it. Quite frankly, it's a bonus for the community, but the Lions Club has the financial capabilities, and we'd like to share that with the community. And Jackson Park seems to be a natural right now. There'll be other things come up, I'm sure, but that's where we'd like to invest our money.
It's greatly appreciated. I did just want to confirm with Abigail that it sounds like you've been working with staff, but staff's comfortable with the design and with the long-term maintenance of this proposal.
Thank you, Counselor, for the question. I had checked in with Adam, and I know that you two met last week, and we're comfortable with the project as proposed. Obviously, the devil's in the details. There's a lot more work to be done from an engineering point of view, but we're really comfortable and happy about these enhancements.
Awesome, thank you. Well, then thanks for bringing us something that's easy to say yes to.
Yeah.
Well, I would hope you would, because it's something we'd like to do. So
Great. Anything, Tim? Or
No, thank you so much, and thanks for all of the rest of the stuff that the Lions do. Appreciate it.
sure, you're welcome.
I
Mark?
have one question. Thanks, Mike. This is great. And thanks. When there's snow, the snowboarders have been making jumps off with our tables off right where you're making the ADA seating. And then the kids slide down. You know, you and I have carried coolers down that steep cliff for years and years and years. And so the stairs are great for that. But just think about when there's a foot of snow on there and there's people trying to sled down that little piece.
Well, I can't
How
say
do
they
you
won't
prevent
do
them
it.
from damaging?
I can't say they won't do it. Yeah, but the railings themselves are being designed by sloshers, and they're taking into effect that there's no skateboarders going to be on that rail because of the way they're designed. They won't be able to get their skateboards up there and run down that rail. I can't tell you what will happen with the snow. It would be a nice little chute going down there.
And it will be.
Yeah. Yeah, but there'll be railings on both sides to hold them in, so they'll just go straight down.
I was just give that a little bit of a thinking, like, what's that? How is this? How are they going to try to kill it sledding?
They'll figure it out. But even when we built the structure, we talked about kids getting up on the roof of it.
Right.
You know, because of the trees, you know, there, and we thought, Okay, that's an issue we should probably look at, but nobody's done it yet, but they will, they'll figure it out. So the kids are, it's just the way they are, you know?
The kids are smarter than we are.
That's because we've done it. Yeah,
Thank you. No, this is great.
Eric? I know you-
It looks like I just walked in when I did, but I was listening the whole time. So I guess I can only share and thanks that have been expressed already. I mean, I'm Mr. Shen, in the 80s, starting community ed soccer, and it just seems like you've been at it ever since. So you carry a lot of, the community carries a lot of gratitude for everything you've done. And thinking of those who aren't able to enjoy Jackson Park as much as others might be able to through this way, I think is kind of your character, but also of the character of the Lions Club. So thank you, and I'm very pleased to support this.
yeah, thanks. And thank you for being a sponsor for Families in the Park. I think it's a great thing for you to be involved with, and you'll get some good PR out of that. So make sure you send me a logo to me, would you?
I think I did, but I
You
will
did?
double check.
Okay, okay.
And Gladys, are you?
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for being here. Thank you for your contributions. We absolutely need some work done to Jackson Park. And so thank you for taking the time and raising the funds to be able to do so. But I'd really love to be able to visually see all the changes that you're talking about. Wade, have you seen the design? What are your thoughts? I'm just having a hard time visualizing all of the changes that you'd like to make. And then also I wondered about funds for signage. Is that something that the Lions Club would be able to support with, or would we as the city, are you seeing that we would be the ones paying for any additional or new signage down there?
The signage was I thought was with the Public Works, they said they would be able to mark the spots and then put the signs up in the parking spots. So we were kind of hoping the city would take that on.
Yeah, that's my understanding from talking with Adam. I have not seen the plan, Counselor.
And Councilor Rivera, I'll just add that I think we're talking about regulatory signs for parking, which is in our bailiwick. We make those all the time, and we'd want to make them to our same uniform standards as the rest of the city. So that makes sense.
Yeah, yes, I think that would be our preference.
All right. You're blessed, Mike. You go for it. Thank you so much for everything you've done, and the Lions that raised the funds and come up with the ideas and adopted Jackson Park. Really appreciated.
May I add one just comment?
Mhm.
Well, thank you, Mike and Lions. At some point, there will be a request to waive fees for this, as the Lions will be donating a great deal of time and effort and money. So we'll come back to you when it's time to act on that fee waiver. I think it'll be under $2,000, a very small amount, but just to know that there's an action that council will need to take. And then hopefully at that time, we can maybe have some drawings or more information to share with you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Back to the signage question, we've talked a lot about updating signage all over, but to have it more inclusive language in there. So if this is an opportunity to start some signage that does have another language besides English, then I would love to see that.
Yeah, go ahead, Abigail.
Oh, just thank you, Counselor. I'm making a note of that, and we can talk further about what that might look like. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Thank you, Greg. Anything? No,
You got it.
all right.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. You're welcome.
All right. That was our presentations for this evening. Work session. Go ahead and open the work session. So under work session, we have adoption of affordable housing strategy, but I think that should actually just be moved to the regular session. Is that correct?
That's correct. We held the discussion item. We held it as a discussion item 2 weeks ago. So this time it's regular business.
Okay, so let's just, we have the work session open. We're going to move that to the regular council meeting because we discussed it last time. And then we will adjourn the work session. That was the only thing we had on it. We'll open the regular council meeting and additions or corrections. Well, the correction would be adoption of the affordable housing strategy. Do we need to do that as a separate item, or can it go under consent?
Which? The adoption of the affordable housing strategy.
And you could, I mean, you could if you're ready to do that. It's a resolution.
All right, let's just keep it separate. Let's just do it separate. We'll keep it separate. All right, consent agenda.
I would move we approve the consent agenda.
A second.
Megan has made a motion to approve the consent agenda, and Gladys has seconded that. Discussion on it? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Chair votes aye. All right. Adoption of the Affordable Housing Strategy, Resolution 2022-06. Okay. Does anyone have questions? We received the resolution and basically the cleanups, and there was only one semi-substantive thing that we did change regarding the geo bond. Just some language that would make it a little stronger that we are going to do that. We're going to investigate it. It's not just possible. It's on the agenda.
I'll just say thank you. I mean, one, it was really nice to have the track changes, and two, yeah, it seemed like everything that was talked about was covered and looked good.
I'll just, since I wasn't here at the last meeting, I want to thank both staff and counselors that were on that thing and all the volunteers that were on that thing to do good stuff and keep the wagon rolling. So that's great.
Yeah, I want to thank, as a council and as a mayor, staff. Jennifer did a fantastic job leading that group. That was a hard task. It was long. You had a lot of people, and all those people just put in long hours. Thank you, all the volunteers that put in all the time. Councilor Saunders, who was on the committee, and that was a lot of stuff to sort through, and it's really, really, really appreciated. We've been trying to get to this for a long time, and now we have a blueprint, and getting that blueprint was difficult, but well worth it. Thank you so much. Any questions on it or comments, Eric?
I think I echo those sentiments. I appreciate all the hard work that was put into it. I would say as well, there was some discussion last week about, or a couple weeks ago, about kind of what is the metaphysics of this work? Does this mean this is all ordinance, or does this mean we're going to work on these things? And I think it's maybe somewhere in between, but it sort of is a blueprint. We have some finished work, maybe to sort of pick out still. We have lineal bathroom, we have tile, those types of things. So, and there will be, I think, some hard decisions for us to make. For example, maybe implicit in proposing a general levy bond is the question of, well, what about the possibility of that same sort of thing for the police department, for example, or at least some value judgments we have to make. And if we adopt a low-income housing code, what will be the reach of that? Similar to the discussion we had with respect to housing. Will it apply to R1? Will it apply to R2? So I think there are still questions for us to grapple with, but this clearly is a robust list of great ideas worthy of consideration. Well, I am thankful for it and have to.
Thanks, sir. Gladys?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, staff, for the tremendous amount of energy and work that has gone into creating this. Councilor Saunders, thank you for your time. The only other comment that I'd have to make is I'd love to see the county and where they're at. I mean, this team has already created a majority of the work. It'd be awesome to see the county also adopting some of this policy or language, as we know that housing is an issue, not only in the city of Hood River, but in our entire county. Thank you.
Thanks, Gladys.
No, thanks again.
So there's if everyone's good with it,
Love to make the motion.
go ahead. You should be the one making the motion, Megan.
I move to approve resolution 2022-06, adopting the affordable housing strategy.
I second.
Megan has made the motion to approve resolution 2022-06, adopting the affordable housing strategy, and Gladys has seconded that. Additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Chair votes aye. All right. Mayor Call, couple things. We met, several city councilors met with Parks and Rec District. They invited us to one of their meetings, and the county was there, and the port was there, and the school district was there. And they talked about their proposed restructuring of some sort. And what was that, what would it involve? And no decisions were made, but it was a really robust discussion. I think it was a really good discussion. There was a small, we threw out consolidation, which would be a long-term thing that would be in the future if we did it. But all the entities were like, maybe we should look at it. And I don't think they did not make any decision that evening on what they were going to do. There were some ideas of, maybe you should just go with a smaller pool for now. And just do a capital bond. But it was a really good discussion. I think it was a really productive discussion. There wasn't really anything being asked of anybody money-wise. And so it's just a very open discussion, and I think there'll be more discussion, but I think it was a great start. So I just wanted to report that we'd gone to that meeting for anyone that wasn't able to attend, or the public that might not have been at that meeting. One of the public that's here was at that meeting. So let's see, I think the only other thing, a couple other things. I've been asked by the League of Oregon Cities to be on a task force that will look into funding for the houseless community. So basically what Mid-Columbia Community Action Council is doing, and the monies that they received for this region. So they're doing this by region. It's not by county or city. So I think it's Wasco, Sherman, Hood River, City of Hood River, City of the Dalles. I think we're getting $1 million. And so League of Oregon Cities is putting together a task force of mayors from different size cities in different locations all over the state to work to get additional funding from the legislature next year. I know another tranche of money to go on top of the one we just got, and then to investigate whether there could be some kind of ongoing funding. So it is, it's for housing, it's for helping people find work, it's for mental health that we don't have enough of for the community. So I have been on the Energy Committee, and Tim is my alternate, and he's been going to several of those meetings in the last year. And I talked to Tim today, and he said he would actually take that on as a full-time thing, because I said I can't do these other meetings. Most of the meetings are going to be, I believe, all this year. There'll be 5 different meetings that they're going to have. And 2 of them are going to be one at the Mayor's Association meeting and one at the League of Oregon Cities meeting. So I would have to travel for those two. But Tim said he would step up from alternate to being the one. So I appreciate it, Tim. And then the other thing that may be happening in July, it's not set in stone at this point, but the port is going to be putting in, I believe, an ask for federal grant for between 175 and $200 million for the new bridge. And so they want to send a delegation of people from Oregon and Washington electeds back to Washington, DC in July. And they've asked me if I would be on that. And so I haven't given them an answer yet, but they don't have a date yet exactly, but they've said it's in July. So I'd like to go to that, but it would not be on the city's time. It would be on the port's time. So that's all I've got. Eric?
No, I don't have anything other than maybe if I could just offer a comment. We had the Lions Club and Mike Shen here, and we've had discussions about the importance of community partnerships in our parks. And one that comes to mind for my family, and I just thought I would just note it as a point of public thanks for the community, is St. Mary's Catholic Church has for years and years and years and years generously allowed Little League to operate on their facility. It's such a point of joy for so many boys and girls in our community. I had the opportunity to meet Father Chalaran, who is the pastor of that church at an event a couple weeks ago. And I know, by the way, the Catholic Church has some goings on with the city working to, I think, expand the parish a bit. They're a growing church, which is wonderful. So we have all these community partners, and I just think one of them is St. Mary's Catholic Church. I'm just thankful for them, and they do a lot for the community.
Thanks, Eric. Mark?
Just a couple things. I have to go back to Florida to complete my penance next week for a couple days. Not necessarily looking forward to that, but it'll be fun. I am wearing a different hat, and I thought I'd just give you guys a fill in. Is the state has hired a consultant. This is a Business Oregon to measure the footprint of the unmanned systems businesses within the state, because there's businesses all the way from Pendleton to the coast supporting this industry kind of thing. And they go, we think this is pretty big. And so I'm helping them a little bit with making sure that the gorge is considered and represented and stuff like that. The outcome of that is going to be, okay, like there's $2 billion a year or whatever coming into the state from all the primary and secondary and tertiary connections between businesses. And then how should Business Oregon help these companies, either recruiting new companies to come to Oregon or what? So it's just at the very beginning phases. And so I'll keep you filled in. And then the other thing I was going to mention is that this is the 80th anniversary of the Japanese Americans being sent off to the desert. Sad thing. And there's going to be a thing at Riverside Church on Friday, and then some people talking about that. So I think you might have all received the little flyer for it, but I'm going to go to that. So that's all I got.
Thanks, Mark. Tim?
Thanks, Mayor. Just briefly, I had been, as representative of the city, kind of interacting with the Gorge Commission and their climate action plan. And I just wanted to let people know that the climate action plan, its draft form, is open for public comment. So I can send a link to everybody, anybody who's interested in reviewing that. But I would encourage people to look at it and see what you think. Thank you.
Megan?
That just reminded me, not Senator, Congressman Blumenauer released his proposed, I don't know the language, but bill language, I think today. So that's available on his website if folks want to review it. And I think he's got a public comment forum. I will also be attending the commemoration of Japanese internment on Friday. And then reminder to everyone again, there is a May 17th election. Ballots should be in your houses at this point, so please vote.
And I'll also be going to the event on Friday. Gladys?
No, Counselors Ann Miller and Saunders gave the same updates I was going to, so nothing else to add. Thank you, and don't forget to vote.
All right. Thank you, everyone.